Hello. This is my attempt at a vlog. I've never tried it before, and hopefully I won't be too weird about it. And hopefully my cat will not get dog on it. Alright, clearly this is going to be a vlog with a cat, because it's just the only way it's going to happen. I want to talk to you a little bit about Tantalus Depths, because that's why I'm here. I wanted to try and do something a little bit more personal, so hence the vlog. So it's not just going to be about Tantalus Depths. I also want to kind of talk about storytelling and what it means to me to be a writer, and maybe talk a little bit about myself too. I don't know. We'll find out. So Tantalus Depths is a personal. It's a personal goal of mine to get published. It's always been a personal goal of mine to get published ever since I was a kid. I've been writing stuff ever since I could write. I was writing stories of some kind or another, whether it be comic books that I would make with my dad. Usually, like, we wrote like little Star Wars comic books. He would like do the dialogue, I would do the pictures, and then later on I would start doing both myself, and I was so cool. And then he wasn't really involved in the process, and then I would move on from that to doing like fan fiction type stuff, and then eventually I finally, my dad, I can credit him for this, he said, why don't you do something new? Why don't you do something original? So I was like, okay, I'll try something original, and I did. I decided to start writing my own original stories that weren't based on any other fictional universe, and I did. And I came up with several fictional universes during my high school years that I developed over time, but none of them were really up to my current standards. So I came up with a bunch of stories while I was in high school, and they were alright. They were pretty good. I'd like to revisit them at some point, but they weren't up to snuff. They were before I really had a college education, obviously, before I really understood what really makes for good writing, very teen-oriented stuff, had all the teenage angst and things like that in it. Although it wasn't like your Twilight-style storytelling, it was still very creative and very focused on world building. I did so much world building, but it wasn't up to snuff. So during college, I came up with the idea in one of my creative writing classes. It was originally only supposed to be a short story. It was supposed to be my final project, but it was originally a story where I was supposed to write from someone's point of view that was not my own. And I'd already kind of had ideas for a story in my head that was going to be for my final, the big final story of the semester, but I knew I wanted that story to have a female protagonist. And in this earlier assignment, I was supposed to write from the point of view of somebody who was not me, who was not like me, so I was like, I will write from the perspective of a woman. And it was also important to me just because I've known so many strong female people in my life, and it's always bothered me that there aren't enough strong female characters, and the strong female character has connotations to it which have their own problems if you stereotype them that way, but it's always bothered me that there are not more female characters that remind me of the women I know in real life. So I wanted to go out of my way to create a story with a character who kicked butt and was a woman, and the two were not existing separate from one another. Like, she's a woman who kicks butt, and that's just how it is. Like, I wanted to write a story like that. And so I did. And it was originally only going to be a short story, but the longer I went with it, the more ideas I got with it. Like, it was, I don't even remember specifically my original idea, but it was going to be this woman who was part of a research expedition on this planet beyond explored space, and she was going to be discovering things about herself while also discovering this great cosmic mystery, and that eventually evolved into this much more complicated aspect with the AI Scarab and the complex dynamic between her and the crew and the greater mystery of what this world is. And by the time I got most of the way through my outlining for it, which I did for the class, I realized there's too much here for a short story. And like for the class requirements, I only had to write 30-page, I think a 25-page story to meet the class restrictions. And I did, and I went above and beyond that. I went to like 35 pages, and it was about the maximum I could do for that assignment. But the story wasn't done. And it was okay for me to just write the first couple chapters of a novel-length story. That was all right for the class, and I got a good grade in the class. The problem is, when the class was over, even though I still knew where I wanted to go with this story, I didn't have the incentive to go on with the story. It just kind of sat there, which was a shame. Like, I would come back to it every once in a while, I would write a little bit in it, and then I would set it aside. And I kept doing that over and over again. And it ended up just sort of sitting there for like a year. And eventually, as luck would have it, for my senior year assignment for my writing minor, I minored in writing, my senior assignment was kind of an independent study where I just had to write a 70-page or more document. And I was able to take the class with the same professor who helped me come up with this idea to begin with in that other creative writing class. So I decided for my final project, to cap off my college career, I'm going to finish writing Tantalus Depths. And so I did. Even though, by the end of the story, it was even longer than I thought it would be then, because it ended up being way more than 70 pages I needed to write. It wound up being closer to 200 more than I had already at the beginning of the assignment. But I finished it. It was a mad dash toward the end of that class. That last week, I will always remember it because I was writing 20 to 30 pages a night, and then towards the end, the last night, I wrote like 40 pages in one night. I got like 3 hours of sleep, and that was it. And I went insane, but it was done. And I was so happy because I'd finished this novel I was so passionate about. And since this was only a couple years ago, my writing skills had significantly improved over high school. Like, I came out of this with a product that I felt deserved to be read by people. And I was encouraged. My professor encouraged me to go ahead and try and get it published, and I've wanted to do that ever since then. But again, once the class ended, I no longer had any particular incentive to go on. I wasn't getting graded on having made an effort to get it published. So I had other stuff happening at the same time. I had a really busy year all the way around that year. So it was easy for it to get pushed aside, and it did, and before you know it, it was gathering dust just like it had when it was just the first half of the draft. And then a couple of weeks ago, or a couple months ago, I discovered Inkshares, and I discovered it through the Geek and Sundry Hard Science Fiction Contest, and it just kind of plopped there right in my lap. I was like, oh! There's a contest where if you have a hard science fiction novel, you can get it published as a prize. I have one of those. I can get my book published now. And I was like, even if I don't win the contest, I could still do the publishing thing through raising pre-orders. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I finally had an incentive. I had a contest. I could enter and win. And I went all in. I jumped right on board. I was like, okay, I have this book. It's a good book. People are going to like this book. So I'm going to try and get it published. And I have been. And I didn't win the contest, but I knew I wasn't going to even when I entered it, because I entered it like 3 weeks into the contest, and like 2 days after it began, 2 days after I began my campaign, I had a previous commitment to go on a trip to New York for almost a week. so I couldn't work on it then, so I missed out on almost an entire month of the competition. So I knew going into it I was not going to win, but I still managed to really pull everything together. I got a lot of support from my friends, and I came in 5th place. There's no prize for 5th place, except for like bragging rights, which I just used just now, which was great. But I came in 5th place, and I was like, I got this far, I'm going the rest of the way. So I'm going the rest of the way. I'm not gonna stop until I hit 750 pre-orders and get the full publishing deal. I've just recently received the 250 Quill publication goal, which was fantastic. It made my night. I got a huge pull of support to get me there that day. I think I got like 12 pre-orders, and normally I get like 5 a day at the most, which is bad because it makes me fall behind. But I got a big surge of support then, and it made me feel awesome. So I'm still pushing at it. I have until the middle of August, unless I can get an extension. I have until then to get the rest of my pre-orders in, and I'm going for it because I have something pushing me. I have a goal. I have a reason to go on with this. And I know for a fact, once it gets to that goal and gets published, people will like the book. Like, I know that. I'm not bragging. I know that I've created something people will enjoy, that I'm proud of, that I want to be able to share with people. And I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Now, I want to talk a little bit, too, about just what storytelling is to me. Because I think that's something that is at the core of why all writers do what they do. Like, I've been writing since I was a child because I love storytelling. I love stories. I'm addicted to stories. I need stories as much as I need food and water. Like, I need to be able to express creativity, and I need to be able to consume the creativity of others. I think being creative is one of the most important things about being a person. You have this ability to create, and if you're not using it, what's the point of being a person who has that ability? My earliest memory of me being a storyteller goes back to when I was about 5 or 6. We live in Northeast Ohio, me and most of my immediate family, and we live very close to Amish territory. I actually technically currently live inside the 4th largest Amish settlement in the world. It's not quite as rural as it sounds. It's actually a pretty decent sized town, and it's nice here. But my grandparents used to have like Amish neighbors, and they lived out in the country. And there was this one day where my grandpa, who was really into cars, he was having a new garage built. It was a brand new garage. Like, it was just at the beginning of laying the foundation for it. Like, there was just this big old patch of mud, I remember, and these big posts that were being put there to be the beginning of the construction for this new garage. And he had a bunch of his Amish neighbors and like families of his Amish neighbors who were there to help build the garage. And I remembered I had to have been between 5 and 6, because that's the age I was when me and my family lived with my grandparents. But I remember distinctly a time where in the evening I was standing in the midst of all these Amish men who were all taking a break after working really hard on putting this barn together. They were standing there watching, and I was telling them a story. I don't even really remember what the story was, except I specifically remember my story involved giant worms, and that I was pretending these giant posts that were there to build the garage were giant worms, and they were arranged around us because we were sitting and standing in the middle of this circle of these, not circle, but these posts. So the giant worms were fencing in the hero of the story, and he was going to have to fight the giant worms. And I mean, I was a kid. Obviously, they were just kind of standing there and like humoring me and listening to me talk, and I don't remember what my story was, so obviously it couldn't have been that significant. But I remember that day so vividly, even though it was so long ago, way longer ago than I care to admit, but it was important to me even then to be creative and to express that creativity to others. It was important to have other people appreciate the creativity that I can provide them. It's a cultural exchange between two people. It's you having a created world inside your mind that you have to share with other people. So ever since then, probably earlier than that, I've just had this need to create stories. Me and my sister, we played so much as children. We would create these fictional worlds with our toys, with ourselves. We would play in these fictional universes. We had multiple fictional universes. Like, one set of toys lived in this universe, one set of toys lived in this universe. They wouldn't combine. They had internal consistency and internal fictional rules. And ever since I can remember, storytelling has been intrinsic to who I am. It's one of the reasons why I love writing. It's one of the reasons I love reading, watching movies. One of the reasons I'm so involved in theater. Everything, to me, that creates a story has worth on its own. And that's just what I want to share with other people. That's why I'm a writer. That's why I'm trying to get published. It's not just so I can get money. Although it'd be great to get paid to do something I like for a change, because that's never happened to me before in my life. But it's a desire to be able to share what's in my brain on a massive scale, to build a base of people who appreciate the sort of creativity I have, and to be able to expand on that base and tell more stories. Like, Tantalus Depths is one story I have published. There are hundreds more in this brain, and several more that are on paper in some form or another that just haven't been cohesively created into a story that's ready for publishing. But if I can get Tantalus Depths published, it is just the first of many. I have sequels in mind for Tantalus Depths. I have already in mind the idea that Tantalus Depths takes place in an anthology universe where I will tell other stories that exist in the same universe that aren't directly connected to the story. And I have ideas for completely separate stories, and I want to tell all of them, and I'm going to. It's just a matter of how long it takes to do it. So, all I'm asking of anybody is to help me do that. It's to help me share the stories that I can tell with the world. I don't care about the money. I don't care about getting people's attention. I don't care about fame and fortune. There's better ways to get that than being an author, for goodness sake. I'm doing this for the sake of creating stories. So if you have not already, there's going to be a link in the description, wherever that description box happens to be for this format of video. I don't know right now. But there's going to be a link to Tantalus Depths on inkshares.com/books/Tantalus-Depths. I've been sharing on all the social media that I have access to several times a day, all day, every week for the past several months, and I've already had several people unfriend me on Facebook for it, which, if somebody asking you to potentially consider buying a $10 book is worth more than a friendship, then I guess that's okay. But if you'd like to help, and haven't already, please consider purchasing a pre-order of Tantalus Depths. It will help me achieve this goal. If you have already, ask your friends, ask your family, share it with everyone you can think of who'd be interested in either this book or helping an author you know become published and achieve a literal lifelong dream. Whatever you can do, share on social media. I'll take anything. I'm a third of the way to the final goal, and I'm not stopping till I get there or die, which, who knows which is more likely at this point, considering how much this is taking out of me. But I've gotten to the rambling stage, so I'm going to end it here. So, thank you for watching, and I'll do another one of these next week. Hopefully, it'll be more cohesive. But, in the meantime, I should have a catchphrase, but I don't yet. We'll work on that.